Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Motorsports. Joe Samaniego here, Daniel Zeri from Racers, the girls behind the helmet. Before we get started with our regular program, we have to talk about the breaking news, which has people's cell phones, smartphone devices going off. Michael Masi is no longer in charge of race directing responsibilities for Formula One. He has been replaced. We got a new system coming into place with two alternating race directors, a senior advisor, and a virtual race control. Daniel, I know you're very familiar with some of the race control aspects and everything. When it comes to the moves that we're seeing from F1, what is your initial thoughts on the proposals announced today?
Oh, hello everyone. Hi Joe, and thank you to all our viewers that always stick with us. As you said, I'm pretty happy about this announcement. I think they were all sensible decisions. Um, for a start, I think both of the race directors announced today make a lot of sense. Of course, Eduardo Freitas for WEC, very respected in the business, and also from DTM, the second race director that will, of course. Help that will be helped by Herbie Blush, who is a very senior advisor, has been in the business for a lot of time. Was also in race direction with Charlie Whiting, so I think couldn't have been a better person for this task. And as you said, I think I still have to understand a little bit how the virtual race control will work, because I had the opportunity to go into race control in a circuit, in a Formula One circuit. And it's really impressive. There's a lot of technology, a lot of screens, data, and footage. You can view frame by frame footage also on with sensors in each and every corner, in each and every curb. There is a sensor and a camera. So I think it's really impressive. So they definitely have all the data, but you have a lot of stuff going on in a session, and we often forget how short sessions are when you have to look after all these things, and with 20 race managers in your ears screaming stuff. So I think also banning the direct communication, radio communication between the teams and the race direction, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think a messaging app would be more than enough for a communication. And of course they will find the right solution for this. As I said, I'm trying to understand how this virtual race control works, because from what I understand, from my initial understanding, it's going to be a backup race control, a backup system within the FIA headquarters. So they will basically check if every rules are being applied, and I have to understand if they can reverse decisions or something. So I hope this does not slow down the process of the decision making, because of course you really have to be quick and react to stuff like with flags or safety cars and stuff like that. So if you have a backup system having to check your decision before it are announced, it's going to be a little bit slower. But hopefully they will only employ this in major situations.
That's why I'm anticipating as well, seeing if they're going to apply the backup for major situations. Because there was times it seemed this past year they didn't want to affect the outcome, so it was sort of let go. Where I think if we had something where the backup says no, there must be a penalty for consistency, I think that is a wonderful move. We have a couple comments in the chat room. First from Adam, is an awesome announcement. Lots of respect for Eduardo. Of course, Eduardo, as you mentioned, a ton of experience. And then Amber, any concerns about two different race directors applying the rules differently? I guess there could always be that potential how a race director sees that. Is that a concern, or do you feel that virtual backup and the senior advisor might negate some of those concerns?
That's actually a really, really good question. I think also that was one of the first things that came into my mind when I saw that, because of course we've seen this with stewards. You know, every race does different group of stewards, so sometimes the decisions are not always consistent. But I think the presence of Herbie Blush, the senior advisor, that is exactly his task. His role is to make sure that the decisions will be, there will be consistency in the decisions. So I think. All these three race direction basically are going to work on that and to be on the same page for both the Freitas, Vitti, and of course Blush.
And Amber 100% agrees on the stewards because we've seen that, as you mentioned, the stewards from one race, since they're different drivers from different weekends, have different interpretations. It's definitely going to be something we're going to be following here on the Grid Network. So be sure, if you're tuning in for the first time, subscribe to the Grid Network. We'll be following more of this news. And of course, later on, Kobe, Adam, and I believe Ben are going to be previewing the Gatorade Duels, and then of course Daytona 500 weekend and the Grid ranking in the first Sunday of April. So a lot going on in this motorsport calendar, and of course we still got some time until F1 starts. One of the big things, of course, we know NASCAR is starting up this weekend. One of the new programs starting up is Busch Beer's new Busch Light Accelerate Her. That was announced in an effort to sponsor 7 female racers and invest $10 million in a 3-year commitment in the NASCAR ladder system. That is 25% of Busch sponsorship funds dedicated to getting female racers more track time, media exposure, and training. And as you can see, there are the 7 initial drivers: Amber Belkamp, Brittany Zamora, Jennifer Jo Cobb, Tony Bredinger, Melissa Fifield, Natalie Decker, and Stephanie Moyer. All of them are over the age of 21. So one of the big names we didn't see was Haley Deegan. She is 20-year-old. Gracie Trotter, Bridget Burgess, they're all 20-year-olds. Mariah, 20-year-olds again. So Bush Bush Light, of course, a product for people 21 and over. Looks like that may have been the decision for going with the sponsorship route. And Daniel, have you ever seen such a commitment from a sponsor like this? And can we see potentially more sponsorship follow what Bush Light did?
I think this is a really first for sponsors, and I think it's absolutely amazing. Hopefully, it paves the way for more sponsorships deals in following, their footsteps. But it's I hope it's really going to make a difference. And I think, as we mentioned, they are all over 21. So that may be, of course, it's understandable because they're beer manufacturers. So of course still have these regulations. But of course, when you're trying to get into the top echelons of motorsport, starting to get sponsorship at 21 is not ideal because, of course, you would want to start a lot earlier for development into the bigger championships. But still, it's a really great first step. I think this is meant to be a first step. We can't expect to have magically 50% of female drivers in the Cup Series next year. Of course, it's going to be a long process, but that's a great first step, I think.
A great first step. I have to agree, and I'm hopeful this is the start of some more sponsorship where we could see sponsors like Busch Light, maybe even other sponsors that we've seen them really participate in NASCAR a lot more frequently, like McDonald's, Ally, to try to get something to have, whether it's more female drivers or even more black drivers, more drivers from diversity groups that we don't see out on the racetrack often.
I think we lost Joe for a moment there. Of course, we were talking about the new Busch Light sponsorship in NASCAR. We were discussing about how this is going to affect the future of female drivers in NASCAR, in the highest categories of NASCAR. I think it's a 3-year deal for now. It's quite a big sponsorship. It's quite a lot of money to start. And the really innovative thing is that they are going to sponsor every driver eligible for the program. So this is a really quite important step. And here we have Joe back again.
Yeah, it seems like internet gremlins, they're coming back. Maybe some Michael Masi fans just trying to pull up true or something. We'll find out. But as you mentioned, very huge. I got to ask you this question. I know as a former racer, 3 years, especially when you're climbing up a ladder system, to have a sponsorship for 3 years, how huge is that for a driver, especially knowing they got the funds, and then, like Busch Beer said, they're going to have media opportunities, training. How much could that really improve a driver during those 3 years in a ladder system?
I think it's a very good time span to understand if the driver is about to step up to our new categories, or potentially into the main cities. Because as you mentioned, Joe, the most important thing in this deal is just in my opinion, is that they're not just pouring money into a program, but they are also really want to develop the driver. Track time, it means a lot. A lot of drivers that I've spoken to also here in Europe, the female drivers are always telling me how difficult it is for them just to get the same amount of track time that some of the other drivers, some of the male drivers are getting. And then we see them of course progressing, because it's all about the track time. This is the most important thing. It's really the money is well spent when it really funds the track time. And so this specific partnership with Busch Light, I think it's really going in the right direction. And also, of course, they're going to make the most out of the media exposure, because of course it is one of the biggest NASCAR sponsors, and it has been for a long time. So I think really having the plan of sponsoring the driver, but not just throwing money at them, but also developing the driver through a lot of track time, and getting them the other opportunities with their media exposure. I think also this was a little bit lacking in some of the others previous programs that we have for diversity funds, for example. When yes, they had some money for a little bit of time, but then they ran out of opportunities because they didn't have enough experience to sell them to other sponsors or stuff like that. So I think this is really well thought out for a start.
Yeah, it seems really well thought out, especially using the NASCAR ladder system. I mean, Tony, she is in ARCA this year. In 25, I think she could have a very potential good year. I know Natalie Decker, she's been on and off, having the sponsorship, more races. That'll be great for her in the Xfinity or the Truck Series. And we know she could road race, so I'm interested to see how she could do in a road race. Daytona last year was a big disappointment when at that road course she got taken out on the first lap, and that ruined her race. Then once we see the 20-year-olds come up, Bridget Burgess, I know we talked to her at Portland International Raceway. This is just huge opportunities. I think it's just well thought out by Busch Beer, Busch Light, and especially considering how way back in the past where Anheuser-Busch, when you thought of Busch Beer and females, usually was the Budweiser swimsuit. Well, now they're getting rid of the swimsuit, encourage them to put on the fire suit and get behind the wheel. I just think this is just huge for a sponsor to make that commitment to these drivers, and very excited. We definitely, I think, applaud Busch Light for what they're doing and going to be following all these racers throughout the year. I know one of the big news we saw came from Mercedes about a new upcoming racer in the F1 Junior program.
Yeah, we were just talking about drivers getting their sponsorship at over 21. Well, now we have a driver getting her first major sponsorship at 11 years old. And of course, she is Luna Fluxa, a Spanish karting driver that has just been signed by Mercedes F1 team. So this is a very, very big news for Luna and for the whole Spanish, motorsport scene and karting. She has been racing for quite some time. Actually, she started really young. and she was born in 2010, so this is already impressive if you think about it. And she has been racing and competing in the Yame Euro Series last year, and she won the championship with in the last race at Genk in Belgium, really dominating the last couple of rounds. She is one of the drivers that everyone was talking about. She has been also a graduate of Mujer in Motor, which is a program of the Spanish Auto Racing Federation, specifically targeted to female drivers. And I really applaud them because they've been doing a lot of great work at the Spanish Federation. And we have Amber commenting that was Lewis 11 years old when he was signed with Mercedes or McLaren? Yes, he was also 11 years old when he was signed with McLaren. So this is really, it really shows how we were just talking about before, how it is important to get that kind of support very early on in karting, for example. If you really want to make it to F1 or NASCAR Cup or all these elite championships, you really have to get that kind of amount of sponsorship and track time and support from the beginning, from the get-go. So this is why it's important for a junior program like Mercedes, for example. There have been a couple of new additions, and the most interesting one, I think, is Luna Flugscheid, 11-year-old. For her, she will step up to the OKJ class in karting this year, but still racing in karting, of course, but with the support from the Mercedes F1 teams, which is going to make a world of difference.
A world of difference, and as you mentioned, they're answering that question. For someone to be recognized at 11 years old, I think that is spectacular. I'm very excited for Luna and see how her progression goes in karting. Now, one driver we've talked about almost pretty much since we first went on the air, Sophia Flores. Well, she had some very exciting news this past week where she announced she is joining GRIDnet Racing, part of their 2022 driver lineup in ELMS LMP2 competition. Now, of course, she was doing LMP2 competition last year with Richard Mille Racing. That was the all-female team with Tatiana Calderon and Beitska Visser for the last 2 seasons, including the 24 Hours of Le Mans, where that 1 year in class they got, I believe, a 6th place finish. Very successful effort. Now, she'll be in the number 53 car, while, of course, one of the big stories was Daniel Kvyat, the former F1 driver. He's going to be in the 26 car. So 26 for Kvyat, 53 for Sophia Flores. And Daniel, I have to ask you, I know we've seen Sophia do LMP2 competition with this team, GRIDnet Racing, a 2-car effort. They seem to have some of the experience there. What are some of the realistic goals we can anticipate from Sophia this year?
I think this was it made a lot of sense for Sophia to sign with the GRIDnet. It's an important team. It's one of the most successful team in the European Le Mans series. Of course, she was racing in WEC last year, so at the beginning it might sound a little bit of a step down for Sophia, but I think it makes perfect sense because, of course, the Richard Mille Racing moved away from an all-female crew, which is a little bit sad to see, of course. After the program really brought some great talent into sports car racing and endurance, as you mentioned, the Beitska Visser and Tatiana Calderon also. And Sophia, I think, has, since her days in Formula 3, has really found her place in endurance and in sports car. She's really competitive in LMP2 machinery. She's really finding her pace there. And so I'm really happy to see her back in European Le Mans series, and I think she really has some great potential for podiums and for victories. We saw her last year taking part in the last round at Portimao with Algarve Pro Racing, where she finished on the podium. She was the first woman to ever score up an overall podium in ELMS. And we also have to say that G Drive, they're also going to be back in WEC, as you mentioned, with Daniel Kvyat. But they've been winning races and taking titles in European Le Mans Series for quite some time. So I think it's really a good chance for Sofia, who was also leading the post-season testing in Bahrain last year in December, I think. She tested for a couple of teams. And I was just saying that G Drive has a partnership with Algarve Pro, so the team that she raced the final round of the season last year. So she already has some kind of partnership with them, and so the technical partnership between G Drive and Algarve Pro, I think it's great news for Sofia, and I hope she can win a race, as Amber is saying, and hopefully be on the podium on a more consistent level.
Yeah, on the podium, getting a race win. I think those are all really exciting measures. And with that team, I think it's always something else, as you mentioned, going from WEC LMS. It's the same LMP2 class, a little bit of a different car. It just, I feel always sort of that first year is a little bit of a challenge. I mean, but definitely, I think Sophia, with the experience she has and the experience this team has, I anticipate them running up towards the front end. We're going to be very excited to see Sophia in that ride. And then we have some exciting news about GB4, two new drivers in that competition.
Oh yes, GB4. It's a really interesting new championship. We will see all the Formula 4 championship from this year moving into the new cars. So we've seen the new Tatu's Formula 4 car making its international debut in the Formula 4 UAE Championship. It will also be used in Italy, Germany, UK, and all these national championships. So it kind of opened a market gap for the older cars, the older Tatu's cars. So this is where really GB4 is trying to target to find its place on the market. GB4, it's a Great Britain 4, which is of course it's a British championship. The 4, it's because they will be using Formula 4 cars, and as I said, they will be using the older Tatu's Formula 4 cars, where there are really hundreds of these chassis all around the world. So it makes sense for them to set up a new championship, and it's going to be a lot more cost effective than the Formula 4 championships, the main ones, the main national ones. So I think it's going to be really an interesting championship, and only 2 drivers have been announced so far, and interestingly, both of them are females. And also there's a third one who tested the car. Probably she will not be racing this year because she doesn't have the age yet to compete. And she's Masi. She's a karting driver, and she will be doing some testing program this year, potentially to start racing when she will turn 15. But the 2 drivers that have been signed already are Logan Hanna. She's Scottish, and she's been racing in the Formula 4 UAE in the Arab Emirates 2 years ago. And last year she's been racing and winning races in Formula 4. While the second driver is Jessica Edgar. She's the cousin of Red Bull-backed driver Johnny Edgar that we've seen in the FIA Formula 3 Championship. So coming from a racing family. And she will race for Arden Motorsport, which is Fortec Motorsport. Forget about it. Fortec Motorsport, which is a really important British team. So two drivers announced, and both of them are females, which is a great start for a new championship, and hopefully we will see even more in this new series.
Yeah, very excited to hear that new series and 2 drivers, both females. That's really great start, I think. And hopefully we can see soon more and more series where it's not just like 2 females and 19 male drivers, but maybe more closer numbers between the 2. So really exciting. And of course, you mentioned about testing. We know W Series, their next testing is going to be in Barcelona. We know they did
Yes.
the testing period in Phoenix and now Barcelona. What do we know so far about some of this upcoming testing information for the W Series in Barcelona?
Yes, speaking about a series with 100% of female participants so far, of course, there is the W series. They had, as you mentioned, the test in Arizona a couple of weeks ago. It was really interesting to see some of the potential new candidates getting on track with the Formula 4 car. But of course, they will now have to go behind the wheel of the actual Formula 3 regional car that are used in W series. So W Series has just announced the new test in Barcelona, which will be in 2 weeks' time, and we asked the permission to attend the test. But we still don't know the lineup yet. So we don't know which driver are going to go to Barcelona. From our understanding, some of the drivers that were testing in Arizona will go to Barcelona, and also some of the and all the drivers that will enter the series will be in Barcelona. So we still don't know which one of the drivers that were not in the top 8 will be back on track, because of course we understand that some of them will be on the grid together with the new entrants. So the lineup is still to be announced. I think probably will be announced later this week or next week, so very shortly. And we also have an interview with some of the drivers that were in Arizona coming up shortly. And that's we are really looking forward to see the new W Series lineup.
Very excited to see what this new W Series lineup is going to look like, and of course we encourage everyone to be sure to visit Racers Behind the Helmet for all the latest news, including news we didn't discuss, like the Iron Dames expanding, of course F4, and of course the big news about Luna that we discussed. And of course, go to the calendar. This weekend, one of the first busy weekends we have from NASCAR. We know there's Natalie Decker, we have Tony Brenninger, we got Haley Deegan, and we got plenty of races throughout the weekend, including Extreme E. All you do is just click there and you'll see the drivers in each of the series that we follow right here on the Grid Network. And Daniel, I think it's safe to say it's starting to feel like the motorsport season is back.
Oh yes, definitely. It's kicking off again, all the championships. Of course, we have the big weekend of NASCAR at Daytona, with some great female talent throughout the categories. So ARCA, Xfinity, the truck. We're just missing that one in the Cup Series, but we're getting there.
We are getting there, and they're definitely getting to the point where we're out of time on the program. We want to thank Colin, Deschelle, Mark, and Robin for keeping us on the air, and encourage everyone to visit all of our Grid Network social media sites. We also stream on Twitch as well, so if you're into video games, check that out as well, where we broadcast our live programs. And public.com, $5 in free stock if you use the referral code GRIDnet. Then you can start investing and utilizing the stock market for your portfolio. And we want to thank Daniel from Racers to Girls Behind the Helmet for being on the air with us as always every week. And a big thank you to our subscribers and everyone on YouTube. We got a very exciting week ahead. For Daniel Zeri at Racers Girls Behind the Helmet, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.